The morning had started like any other at the small, cozy cafe tucked in the corner of a busy street. Sunlight spilled through the large glass windows, creating a warm, inviting glow that made the wooden tables and chairs look almost golden. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pastries that sat in neat rows behind the glass display. Outside, people hurried past, some on their way to work, others strolling with a sense of leisure. Carrying small paper cups of takeaway coffee in their hands, inside the cafe hummed with life. Baristas moved quickly behind the counter, steam rising from the espresso machine, the rhythmic clatter of cups and plates adding to the symphony of a busy morning. Among them was Alex, a young employee who had become a familiar and comforting presence for regular customers. Alex moved in a wheelchair, but no one who knew them ever thought of them as anything less than capable. Every day, Alex navigated the cafe with grace and confidence, taking orders, serving drinks, and chatting politely with everyone who walked in. Today, like most days, Alex wore a simple uniform, a plain shirt tucked neatly into black pants, an apron tied securely around the waist, and a name tag that read their first name. Their hair was tied back, eyes bright with focus, and a small, calm smile rested on their lips. Despite the challenges life had thrown their way, Alex carried themselves with a quiet strength that few could ignore. Customers often noticed the care Alex put into every task, from making the perfect latte foam to ensuring each table was clean and inviting. As the cafe began to fill, Alex wheeled around, taking orders efficiently. A mother and her child sat at a corner table, the child pointing excitedly at a slice of chocolate cake while the mother smiled. Across the room, a group of friends laughed over their drinks, occasionally glancing at their phones. Alex moved from table to table, jotting down orders, delivering drinks, and making small talk when appropriate. Each interaction, though brief, was handled with patience and attention, the kind that made people feel seen even in a crowded space, but not everyone in the cafe carried the same kindness. Near the entrance, a man in his 40s appeared, scanning the room with a sharp, judgmental gaze. He wore a crisp jacket and held his wallet in one hand, tapping it impatiently against his palm. From the moment he spotted Alex, there was a flicker of something unpleasant in his eyes, a hint of ridicule that made the air feel slightly colder. Alex noticed him immediately, as they always did when someone's tone or expression suggested hostility. They didn't let it bother them. Years of experience had taught them how to stay calm in the face of judgment, how to keep their dignity intact even when others tried to undermine it. They wheeled toward the man with their usual polite smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Alex asked, voice steady and welcoming. The man smirked, leaning slightly on the counter. "Oh, I just wonder. How does someone like you even manage a job like this?" His voice carried a mocking tone, as if he was daring Alex to respond. "Isn't it hard? With your condition?" For a moment, Alex paused, choosing their words carefully. They had encountered rude customers before, some more aggressive than others. The usual instinct might have been to snap back or feel hurt, but Alex had learned to handle these situations with calm dignity. They took a slow breath, letting their calmness fill the space between them. "I do my job just like anyone else," Alex said evenly, their hands steady on the counter. "It might look different, but the work gets done, and I take pride in doing it well." The man laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound that drew the attention of a few nearby customers. "Pride, huh? That's cute," he said, shaking his head. "I've seen people like you struggle. You're different. People will notice." Alex didn't react with anger. Instead, they wheeled slightly closer, maintaining eye contact. "Different doesn't mean incapable," they said simply. "Everyone has challenges. We all deal with them in our own way." The man snorted and waved a hand dismissively. "Whatever. Just hope you don't mess up my order." He turned his attention elsewhere, muttering under his breath, but the tension in the air lingered. A few customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to speak up or remain silent. Alex moved past him with the same calm professionalism that had become their trademark. They prepared the man's coffee and sandwich, making sure everything was perfect, every detail attended to. Behind the counter, their colleagues shot small glances of sympathy, silently acknowledging the unfairness of the situation. Alex didn't need words of comfort, they had learned to rely on their own strength. But the support of those around them created a quiet network of solidarity. As they served the man at his table, something unexpected happened. Despite his rude behavior, Alex didn't falter. They placed the coffee and sandwich neatly in front of him. "Here's your order." "I hope you enjoy it," Alex said, maintaining that calm smile that seemed almost uncheckable. The man looked up, surprised by the composed, professional response. He muttered a half-hearted thanks, clearly unprepared for this level of courtesy. Meanwhile, other customers continued with their mornings. Some watching silently, others whispering to their companions about how impressive Alex's demeanor was. It was in this moment that the door opened again, letting in a rush of crisp air and sunlight. A hush fell over the cafe as a tall, casually dressed man stepped inside. He carried himself with a quiet presence, and there was something familiar in his face that made several patrons pause. It didn't take long for people to recognize him. The man was Keanu Reeves, the actor, known for his humility and kind nature as much as his roles in famous movies. Keanu approached the counter, smiling politely at Alex. "Hi there," he said warmly. "Could I get a coffee, please?" Alex's eyes widened slightly in surprise, though they quickly regained their composure. "Of course," they said, taking the order with the same professionalism as any other customer. As they prepared the coffee, they noticed Keanu glancing subtly toward the man who had mocked them earlier. There was a quiet tension in the cafe now, a feeling that something significant was about to happen, even as Alex moved around. Pouring the perfect cup of coffee, the presence of Keanu seemed to shift the energy in the room. People whispered quietly among themselves, stealing glances at the scene unfolding. The man who had been rude moments ago looked uneasy, sensing that the atmosphere had changed. Meanwhile, Alex continued their work, showing no sign of nervousness, just steady focus and quiet confidence. Keanu accepted the coffee, nodding appreciatively. "Thank you," he said softly, his eyes catching Alex's for a brief moment. There was something in that glance, a recognition, a respect that made Alex's heart lift slightly. For a person who often faced judgment and ridicule, that simple acknowledgement felt powerful. At that moment, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. The ordinary morning had shifted into something more, something that promised change. Everyone knew that the story was far from over. The rude customer, Alex, and the famous actor now shared the same space, and the stage was set for an encounter that would be remembered long after the coffee was finished. The cafe had grown quiet, the usual chatter replaced with a tense, expectant energy. Customers were glancing nervously between Alex, the rude man, and Keanu Reeves, who stood near the counter, calm and composed, sipping his coffee. Every movement felt amplified, the clinking of cups, the soft rolling of Alex's wheelchair wheels. Even the tapping of the rude man's fingers on the table seemed louder than usual. The man who had been mocking Alex earlier fidgeted uncomfortably. His smug confidence had begun to fade, replaced by unease. He could feel the weight of eyes on him, the quiet judgment of other customers, the calm authority of Alex, and the unmistakable presence of a person whose reputation demanded respect. For the first time, he wasn't sure how to continue his performance of ridicule. "Really?" the man muttered under his breath, trying to sound casual, though his voice lacked conviction. "How do you even manage to do this job? It must be so frustrating working like this." Alex, wheeling past him, continued their tasks with smooth precision. Their focus was unshakable, their hands steady as they cleaned tables and delivered drinks. There was no hesitation in their movements, no sign that the cruel words had affected them. And yet there was an undeniable, quiet strength radiating from them, a strength that seemed to grow stronger with every insult. Keanu observed everything, his face calm but his eyes sharp, taking in the man's behavior, Alex's composure, and the reactions of everyone else in the cafe. He didn't interrupt immediately. Instead, he let the situation unfold for a few moments, allowing the man to reveal the extent of his rudeness, letting everyone witness the contrast between cruelty and quiet dignity. The rude man, Growing bolder or perhaps desperate to assert some remaining sense of control, leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice so only Alex could hear. "I just don't get it," he said, smirking. "How can you stay so calm? Don't you get angry? Don't you get frustrated?" Alex stopped briefly, turning to face him fully. Their expression remained calm, almost gentle. "Anger doesn't help," Alex said softly but firmly. "Frustration doesn't solve anything. I focus on doing my job well and on treating people with respect, no matter how they treat me. That's what matters." The man's smirk faltered. He had expected Alex to be defensive or embarrassed, but instead they stood there, poised, confident, and unfazed. It was a power he hadn't anticipated, quiet, steady, and undeniable. He looked around, noticing the other customers watching him with disapproval. Some were whispering among themselves, shaking their heads, or simply observing in silence. Clearly impressed by Alex's courage, Keanu finally stepped forward, placing his coffee on the counter and addressing the man with calm authority. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I couldn't help overhearing. Do you think it's fair to mock someone for working hard, for doing their best?" The rude man blinked, startled. He hadn't expected to be addressed, let alone by someone famous, someone whose presence commanded attention without effort. I'm just saying," he began, but his words stumbled. Keanu continued, his tone unwavering but kind. "Just saying isn't a reason to be cruel. We all have challenges. Some of us face them openly, some quietly. That doesn't make anyone less capable, less worthy of respect, or less human. Everyone deserves dignity, no matter what." The cafe fell into an almost reverent silence. Patrons leaned slightly forward in their seats, listening intently. Alex remained calm, but their eyes met Keanu's briefly. A silent exchange passing between them, a shared understanding. A quiet gratitude for the support and recognition. The man's face flushed, realizing he had been caught in his own rudeness. He looked around at the other customers, sensing their judgment, and then back at Alex, whose composure had remained unbroken throughout. The realization hit him slowly. He had been wrong. Not just about Alex, but about the idea that cruelty could ever hold power over someone with dignity. I didn't mean," he began, but no words came out that could undo the damage. Keanu's calm, measured response had made it clear that ridicule had no place here. The man slumped slightly in his chair, defeated, uncomfortable, and unusually quiet. Alex, still maintaining their calm, wheeled toward him. "It's okay," they said softly. "I understand that not everyone knows how to handle what they see as different. But it's important to remember, words can hurt. Actions matter more. Treat people with respect, and you'll find it comes back to you in ways you don't expect." The man nodded, barely audible, clearly humbled. It wasn't a dramatic apology, but it was enough to signal a shift, a small, important recognition that his behavior had been wrong. The tension that had filled the cafe moments earlier began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet sense of relief. Other customers, inspired by the exchange, began to whisper quietly to each other, their faces reflecting admiration for Alex's strength and Keanu's wisdom. Some even offered small smiles of encouragement to Alex, who returned them with their characteristic gentle smile. The atmosphere in the cafe had shifted completely from tension to quiet respect. From discomfort to appreciation, Keanu, noticing the change, gave Alex a small nod of approval. "You handled that very well," he said softly. "It's not easy to stay calm in the face of unfairness. You showed courage and strength." Alex felt a warmth spread through them. It wasn't just about being recognized by a famous person. It was about feeling that someone had seen their dignity, their hard work, and their humanity. They had faced mockery countless times before, but this moment, with Keanu's presence and words, felt different. It was a reminder that strength and kindness could leave a lasting impression. Even in a world where cruelty sometimes seemed loud, the rude man, now silent, seemed to shrink into his chair, reflecting on his own behavior. The other patrons, inspired by what they had witnessed, returned to their own conversations, quieter now, more thoughtful. The cafe, once filled with tension and discomfort, had transformed into a space of respect, understanding, and shared humanity. Alex returned to their work, serving drinks and clearing tables with the same calm professionalism that had defined their morning. But now there was a subtle lightness in their step, a quiet pride that went beyond the satisfaction of a job well done. They had faced mockery with grace, had been seen for who they truly were, and had been supported in a moment that mattered. Keanu finished his coffee and placed the cup on the counter. "Thank you," he said softly, smiling. "You're doing something important here, more than just serving coffee. You're showing people how to treat each other, even when it's not easy." Alex nodded, feeling a sense of connection, not just to Keanu, but to the small community of people in the cafe who had witnessed the moment. It was a quiet victory, one that didn't need applause or fanfare. It was about dignity, respect, and the courage to be calm and kind in the face of cruelty. The rude man, now subdued, left the cafe without further words, a small but significant lesson learned. And for Alex, the day continued not with drama or anger, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing they had faced a challenge with integrity, and that their strength had been recognized in a way that words alone could not describe. The morning, once ordinary, had become extraordinary not because of fame, or confrontation, or recognition, but because of the quiet courage of a person doing their best, and the simple, human act of someone standing up for what is right. It was a moment that everyone present would remember, a reminder that respect and dignity are powerful forces, and that even in small spaces like a cafe, extraordinary things can happen. After the rude customer finally left, the cafe seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The tension that had been thick in the air for the past hour slowly began to lift, replaced by a quiet warmth. Alex continued their work, but something had shifted, not in the way they moved or spoke, but in the energy around them. Customers now looked at them differently, with a mix of admiration, respect, and curiosity. Some offered small smiles. Others whispered quietly to their companions about what they had just witnessed. Alex wheeled around the tables, clearing cups and refilling drinks, but their mind wandered for a moment. They thought about how often this kind of situation had happened before, how people had stared, judged, or whispered cruel things behind their back. It wasn't new, but somehow today had felt different. Today, someone had spoken up in their defense. And it wasn't just anyone, it had been someone who didn't need to intervene, someone famous, someone respected. And yet he had chosen to stand up, not in a loud or dramatic way, but quietly, firmly. And with kindness. The memory of Keanu's words replayed in Alex's mind. "You're showing people how to treat each other, even when it's not easy." It was simple, but it carried weight. In that moment, Alex realized that sometimes strength isn't just about enduring hardship quietly, it's also about inspiring others to see the humanity in people, no matter their circumstances. As Alex returned to the counter to prepare a new order, a few customers approached. One woman, carrying a small child, leaned slightly toward Alex and said softly, "You were amazing. I can't believe some people can be so cruel. But the way you stayed calm, it was really inspiring." Alex smiled gently, thanking her. The warmth in her voice made Alex feel seen in a way that went beyond politeness. It felt human, real, and affirming. A man sitting nearby, who had been watching the entire situation unfold, spoke up next. "I just want to say what you did back there. It takes a lot of courage. Not everyone can handle something like that without losing their temper. You handled it perfectly." Alex nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about praise, really. It was about knowing that standing firm, staying calm, and showing kindness could have an impact, even on people who were used to treating others poorly. Meanwhile, the staff behind the counter exchanged small smiles and nods. They had always respected Alex for their professionalism, but seeing the incident unfold and seeing Keanu step in to support them brought a renewed sense of admiration. Alex's quiet strength had not just protected their own dignity, it had reminded everyone in the cafe, employees and customers alike, of the power of patience, kindness, and courage. Keanu, finishing his coffee, stood near the exit, glancing around once more before leaving. Alex noticed the brief nod. He gave a silent acknowledgement that spoke volumes. It wasn't about celebrity or attention. It was about respect, understanding, and the simple act of recognizing someone's humanity. For Alex, that nod was more meaningful than any applause or public recognition could ever be. The cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The noise of conversation returned, the clinking of cups and plates, the hum of the espresso machine, and the soft rolling of Alex's wheelchair wheels across the floor. But the atmosphere felt subtly changed. There was a sense of awareness in the air, a recognition that kindness, respect, and dignity matter and that they can leave a lasting impact. Alex wheeled to the back, taking a short break. They leaned against the counter, taking a deep breath, feeling the relief and the quiet pride of having faced a difficult moment with grace. It had been exhausting emotionally to face someone's cruelty, but there was also a sense of empowerment. For once, Alex felt not just like someone enduring, but someone influencing, teaching, and inspiring others. Even in a small way, the rude man's departure and Keanu's intervention had left a lesson for everyone present. Customers who had been indifferent or passive were now quietly reflecting on their own behavior, on how they treated people in everyday life. Employees felt a renewed sense of solidarity and pride in their work. And Alex, at the center of it all, felt the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing they had stood tall, no matter what. A few moments later, a young man approached the counter, holding a small notebook. "I just wanted to say, I think what you did back there was incredible," he said nervously. "I mean, I've never seen anyone handle that situation so calmly. It really makes you think." Alex smiled softly, nodding. "Thank you," they replied. "Sometimes all we can do is show respect and stay true to ourselves. That's all anyone can ask of themselves." As the morning shifted into afternoon, Alex continued their work, but there was a subtle glow about them. The cafe was busier now, but the energy was lighter, warmer, more positive. Customers who had come for a quick coffee or pastry were now engaged in small, thoughtful conversations. Some complimented the staff, others offered kind words to Alex directly. It was as if the act of standing firm in the face of cruelty had created a ripple effect, touching everyone in the room. Alex took a moment to glance around. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long, golden shadows across the floor. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air, mixed with the quiet hum of conversation. For all the challenges Alex faced each day, moments like this reminded them why it was worth persevering, why it was worth showing kindness, strength, and dignity no matter how others behaved. Even the staff members took a brief pause to reflect. They had always admired Alex, but seeing the confrontation and the way it had been handled left a lasting impression. There was an unspoken understanding among them that courage and dignity weren't always loud or visible. They could be quiet, persistent, and powerful in subtle ways. Alex, wheeling back to the counter, felt a sense of quiet joy, not because they had won or been praised publicly, but because the moment had reminded them and everyone in the cafe of what truly matters. Respect, kindness, and integrity were not just words. They were actions. They were choices made in everyday moments. Even in small spaces like a cafe, the rude customer's absence created a space for reflection. Patrons whispered among themselves, sharing thoughts about the incident. Many expressed admiration for Alex's strength, while some considered their own behavior in light of what they had witnessed. The cafe had become more than a place for coffee. It had become a small stage for a lesson in humanity, witnessed by dozens of people who would carry that lesson with them long after they left. Keanu's brief presence and quiet intervention had amplified the impact. But the real hero of the morning was Alex, not because of fame or recognition, but because of their ability to face cruelty with patience, dignity, and kindness. Their actions had reminded everyone present that standing up for oneself and for others doesn't always require loud words or dramatic gestures. Sometimes quiet strength speaks the loudest. As the day went on, Alex continued serving customers, moving through the cafe with grace and calm. Each smile they received, each kind word, was a reminder that respect and courage could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that were simple yet profound. And for Alex, that quiet ripple was more valuable than any applause, more meaningful than any recognition, and more lasting than any fleeting moment of attention. By the time the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cafe floor, Alex wheeled to the counter and took a brief pause. They looked around, noticing the subtle change in the atmosphere, the way customers now interacted, the way staff exchanged quiet nods of respect. It was a small victory, but an important one, a reminder that one person's dignity, courage, and kindness can influence an entire space, inspiring others to do the same. The morning's tension had faded, replaced by a warm, respectful energy. The cafe was alive again, not just with conversation and coffee, but with the quiet hum of understanding, humanity, and shared respect. And at the center of it all was Alex, a person who had faced cruelty with grace, whose strength and courage had left a lasting impression on everyone present, and whose quiet dignity had created a moment that would be remembered long after the coffee cups were cleared and the cafe doors closed for the day. The cafe had finally settled into a calm rhythm, the morning rush long gone and the afternoon slowly stretching into evening. Customers came and went at a steady pace, some chatting quietly, others typing on laptops or reading newspapers. The sunlight streaming through the windows created long, golden beams that cut across the floor, and the aroma of coffee and baked goods filled the air with a comforting warmth. Alex moved through the cafe as usual, taking orders, serving drinks, and making sure each table was attended to. But there was a difference today. Not in how they worked, but in the atmosphere around them. People looked at Alex with a quiet respect, a subtle acknowledgement of the strength they had shown earlier. Even those who had been silent observers seemed changed, carrying a sense of understanding and admiration that went beyond words. As Alex wheeled back to the counter, a young woman approached, carrying a small notebook. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled shyly. "I just wanted to say, what you did this morning was really inspiring. I've never seen anyone handle something like that so calmly and gracefully. It really made me think about how I treat people every day." Alex smiled gently, nodding. "Thank you," they said. "It's not always easy, but staying calm and showing respect is important. Everyone deserves it, no matter what." The woman nodded, her eyes bright with a mix of admiration and thoughtfulness. Before heading to a nearby table, moments like this reminded Alex why they loved working at the cafe despite the challenges. The job was more than just serving coffee or clearing tables. It was about connecting with people, even in small ways. And sometimes those small moments could create big changes, influencing others to see the world differently, to act with kindness, or to think before judging. The events of that morning, however, lingered in Alex's mind. The rude customer, the mocking words, the uneasy glances, it had all been familiar in a way that stung. Yet, what made today different was the intervention, the quiet yet powerful presence of someone who could have ignored it but chose not to. Keanu Reeves' words and calm action had not only stopped the mockery, but had also highlighted the importance of standing up for what is right. No matter how ordinary the setting. Alex reflected on the way courage works in everyday life. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet choice, made repeatedly to face the world with dignity even when no one is watching. Today had been a reminder that true strength wasn't about shouting, proving, or retaliating. It was about maintaining integrity and compassion even in the face of cruelty. As the afternoon moved on, a few familiar regulars entered the cafe. They greeted Alex warmly, some commenting on how impressive it had been to see the earlier incident handled with such grace. Alex felt a quiet pride, not from the praise itself, but from the understanding that their actions had left an impression. It was a reminder that even ordinary moments like taking orders or serving coffee could carry significance when approached with honesty and humanity. A couple of younger customers lingered near the counter, whispering to each other. One glanced nervously at Alex and then smiled. "I hope it's okay to say this," he said quietly, "but what you did today, it really made me think. I've been unkind to people before, just small things, and watching how you handled that guy, it made me realize how wrong I've been." Alex returned a soft smile. Awareness is the first step, they said gently. Kindness can go a long way, even in ways we don't always see. The cafe staff also seemed quietly transformed. Behind the counter, they moved with renewed purpose and camaraderie. They spoke in softer tones, shared small smiles of encouragement, and treated each other with a visible patience and respect that hadn't been as pronounced before. Alex noticed it too, a subtle, ripple effect of the morning's events spreading throughout the space. Even those who had come simply for coffee or a quick snack carried a sense of reflection. Some lingered a little longer, observing Alex as they worked, perhaps considering how often they had rushed to judgment in their own lives. Others whispered quietly to companions, sharing thoughts about respect, patience, and the quiet power of standing up for oneself with integrity. By mid-afternoon, the cafe had grown quieter. Alex took a brief pause, leaning against the counter and wiping their hands. They watched as sunlight shifted across the tables, the shadows stretching slowly across the floor. For a few moments, everything was still, the soft murmur of conversation, the gentle hiss of the coffee machine, and the faint clatter of dishes in the background. It was peaceful, reflective, and full of possibility. Alex thought about the rude man who had mocked them earlier. It wasn't that they wished him ill or wanted revenge. On the contrary, they hoped he had learned something. Perhaps today had shown him that cruelty has consequences, and that respect, patience, and dignity are more powerful than mockery. Perhaps he would carry that lesson quietly, reflecting on his behavior and considering how to act differently in the future. Keanu's presence had been unexpected, yet it had amplified the lesson. It wasn't about celebrity or fame. It was about the act itself, choosing to intervene with kindness and respect, choosing to stand up for someone in a moment of unfairness. Alex felt a quiet gratitude for the support, knowing that the gesture had made a lasting impact not just on them, but on the entire CAFE acute. As the day slowly turned into evening, Alex continued their work, moving gracefully from table to table. They served drinks, cleared dishes, and exchanged smiles with customers. Each interaction, no matter how small, felt significant. It was a reminder that ordinary actions, performed with patience and integrity, could create ripples of influence far beyond what anyone might imagine. Some regulars lingered to chat, offering small words of encouragement or thanks. Alex listened, responded with warmth, and felt a sense of connection that transcended the normal customer-employee dynamic. There was something profoundly human in these moments, the recognition that we all face challenges, that we all deserve respect, and that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can resonate deeply. By the time the cafe began to quiet down completely, Alex paused to look around one last time. The chairs were neatly arranged, the tables spotless, and the sunlight had faded to a soft golden glow. The room felt lighter, warmer, and more alive, not just with conversation and coffee, but with understanding, empathy, and quiet reflection. Alex wheeled to the counter, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Today had been challenging, but it had also been extraordinary. They had faced cruelty with calmness, stood firm in their dignity, and experienced the profound impact of kindness and support. The morning's tension had transformed into a lesson for everyone present: patrons, staff, and even those who had acted unkindly. It was a day that would linger in memory. Not because of fame or drama, but because of something deeper and more lasting: the power of quiet courage, the importance of respect, and the difference one person can make simply by standing up for what is right. As the last customers left and the door closed behind them, Alex felt a quiet pride. The cafe was now still, bathed in the soft light of late afternoon. It was ordinary in many ways, but for Alex and those who had witnessed the events, it had become a place where respect, kindness, and courage had left an indelible mark. Alex wheeled to the counter one final time, taking a deep breath. They didn't need applause, recognition, or fame. The true reward was the knowledge that they had faced the morning with grace, had inspired others through quiet strength, and had helped create a moment of humanity that would be remembered far longer than the coffee served that day. And as they looked around the cafe, now empty except for the staff quietly finishing their tasks, Alex knew something simple but profound. Courage, kindness, and dignity matter. They matter in small spaces, in ordinary moments, and in everyday interactions. And sometimes in just one day they can change everything.